room. I appreciate understanding in that regard. But Supervisor Pinches, you now have the gavel.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll start out, I guess, Allison, are you going to give us the update here?
Sure. Allison Glassy, Assistant CEO. And what you have before you are recommendations. The direction at the board meeting on October 21st was that the planning team, staff, specifically come back with recommendations for the board's consideration. And staff was also asked to do so taking into account the input received at that board meeting from the public and, you know, in conversation and continued contact with the public. The planning team has done that. So what you have in front of you are 14 recommendations. You had asked initially that we focus on 1 through 9. What we found as we went through them is that you really had to take them all as a whole to have a proper discussion. And so we have tried to put forth recommendations on all 14. And in terms of the public input and communication, the time period between October 21st meeting and this meeting precluded having a formal public meeting in the town of Mendocino. However, planning team staff contacted the speakers who had spoken, as well as took messages from anyone else who wrote into the planning team, and did a lot of communication via email as well as by telephone in some cases as well. So there's been kind of this, I'll call it a flow of electronic dialogue going on, which staff is very appreciative of, getting that kind of feedback and being able to communicate on an ongoing basis. And we look forward in the future to be able to actually carry on some of those conversations in person and on the coast. So what we're bringing back to you are recommendations for consideration. And it is agendized in such a way that you can take action on these recommendations. You may modify them. You may set them aside. There are any number of possibilities. What I really would like to see, though, is a continuation of kind of the flow of this conversation. This is not something that happens overnight. This is not something that you do and then the conversation is ended. There are steps along the way, and what is represented here in these recommendations is what can be done short of actually amending the Mendocino Town Plan and or being involved in an entire revision of the town plan. And then the board can set the time frames and the direction for where we go from there. So I see this as a conversation that I hope can continue to take place on the kind of trading of facts and looking into things and researching and getting information from the public, staff responding to that, vice versa. I think the tone of the dialogue has felt very productive and very constructive to the planning team, and we want to continue in that vein. So the first thing I want to focus on is updating the Mendocino Town Plan tables versus amending the town plan versus revising the town plan. And in some cases, people are using these terms interchangeably, and at least for planning team purposes, we're trying to sort it out so they don't all mean the same thing, because otherwise the terms get very muddied. So the way we're using the term updating is to update the tables with information that is from 2008, as opposed to information from previous eras. We are also using it to mean an action that can be taken without amending the town plan. And I guess as I'm talking this through, I want to acknowledge there may be differences of opinion over how far you can go before you have to amend the town plan. And ultimately, some of this may end up being decided through a legal opinion. So we just have to look at that. But for now, when we use the term update and updating the tables, we're using that to mean something that is allowable in the town plan without requiring formal amendment, modification of the town plan, sending it through the Coastal Commission and getting certification. So that's updating. Amending the town plan means you are in fact officially changing the town plan, and that constitutes an action by the board. It also constitutes sending it on to the Coastal Commission and a need for the Coastal Commission to certify that amendment. When we use the term revision, that's kind of like the full-blown thing. It's like you take the entire plan and you review the entire plan and talk about possibly changing some of the policies, not simply some of the caps or some of those other things. It also has to follow the process of going through the board and ultimately being certified by the Coastal Commission. A revision also implies a much broader community process and a lengthier time frame. How much community process and how long a time frame when you're doing an amendment that's more of a single focus, maybe focused on a particular property or a particular number or whatever, that's, I guess,